Good afternoon, folks. It's Monday, October the 12th, and we are less than a month away from the most important election in our lifetime. I know it sounds cliche when you hear people say that, but this is true. We're going to go down one of two paths as a result of our efforts and your organizational abilities on November 3rd. Are we going to remain a free country, the America that we grew up with and know and love? Or are we going to take a hard left turn towards becoming a socialist America? It's Columbus Day here in Washington, D.C., in Northern Virginia, and in Maryland, and the DMV. Up north, they call it, for the past few years, Indigenous Persons Day. I also read this morning that in Portland, Oregon, after a night of rioting, they're calling it the Indigenous Day of Rage, where they are pulling down, the hardcore Antifa leftists are pulling down statues of Teddy Roosevelt, of Abraham Lincoln, and Christopher Columbus. Also happening in Washington, D.C. right now is a long day for the Senate Judiciary Committee as they consider the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. We've been watching that all day. We suspect many of you guys have too, and we're going to continue to talk about that later this week, especially when we hit the road tomorrow to head up to Michigan for CPAC Michigan this Thursday, October the 15th, where we'll be joined by Brandon Struck, former acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, Sarah Carter, Larry Arnn of Hillsdale College, Representative Tim Walberg, and of course, yours truly, and ACU Chairman Matt Schlapp, and Executive Director Dan Schneider, among some of our other friends. You'll want to tune into that live on the live stream from the Macomb County Drive-In at Freedom Hill this Thursday, October the 15th. We want to focus on Michigan a little bit. We're going to recap one of my favorite speeches from 2020 National CPAC back in February. A candidate for the Michigan Senate seat up there, John James. This will be the second time the American Conservative Union has endorsed his candidacy for federal office. So we're going to hear his fantastic speech that really pointed toward a lot of the phenomenon that we've seen in the middle and second half of 2020. It's downright prophetic. So we want to make sure that you watch that John James speech. But first, we're going to take a quick look back at an interview Matt Schlapp did with one of our favorite House members, Jim Jordan, a 100% American Conservative Union rating after several years in Congress, one of the few members to hold that distinction, where they're taking a look back at some of the Obamagate issues, some of these Steele dossier and the coup against the president. Don't forget, folks, that Donald Trump was absolutely hamstrung for the first 3 years of his administration when he was shutting down the airports to try to stop the spread of coronavirus. Democrats on the Hill were obsessed with his impeachment. Even Nancy Pelosi just last week has begun trying to pull constitutional strings, asking people to look at this 25th Amendment option. What a bunch of malarkey, folks. But we want to remind you of some of the important issues that are at play. So we're going to bring you this interview with Matt Schlapp and Ohio Representative Jim Jordan.
We always love to hear from the great Chief of Staff to President Donald Trump, the former Congressman Mark Meadows, who's doing a great job at the White House. And he's talking about something that we're all tired of talking about, right? Which is this, what looks like to me, I'm not a lawyer, but a lot of illegal activity and really the politicization of using your White House power and executive branch power to spy on and really debilitate your opponent in a presidential campaign. And then as that President Donald Trump tries to get started with a new administration, you listen to what Mark said. Yeah. What's your reaction?
Well, first reaction is you're right. Mark Meadows is a great member of Congress. He's doing a great job as the president's chief of staff, and he's exactly right, and he used the right word, the word spying, because that's exactly what they did. The Obama-Biden administration spied on the Trump campaign, spied on fellow American citizens during 2016, and then into the new administration. And remember, there was never a proper predicate for launching the investigation in the first place. And we know there was not a proper predicate because the Obama-Biden intel community told us. They didn't want to tell us, But Rick Grinnell released their sworn testimony, and we know that what Clapper said, Susan Rice said, what Sally Yates, what they all Samantha, what they all said.
Can I jump in there? When you say proper predicate, if I put that in non-legal terms, which means they had no reason to be able to get a warrant. You have to have a reason in front of a judge. You have to have some suspicion.
Right, and no reason, no basis to launch the investigation in the first place.
Which was done for a president, right?
Yeah.
You don't launch those kinds of investigations unless they're for a person high up on the food chain that's asking you to do that investigation.
Well, we know that there was the now somewhat famous meeting in the Oval Office when it was President-elect Trump. So on January 5th, 2017, 15 days before President Trump's going to take the oath of office, they're meeting in the Oval Office, and Obama's in there, Biden's in there, Comey's in there, Susan Rice is in there. This is the one that she did the email to herself 2 weeks later. And said,
for the record.
For the record, by the book.
Yep.
President Obama said do everything by the book. But they, when you do that, that means they did everything not by the book.
That's right.
That's the meeting where Joe Biden referenced the Logan Act, using the Logan Act to go after a 3-star general, General Flynn. So they did everything wrong here. And as Mark said, people need to be held to account. It's I know you travel a lot. When I'm out and about, it's the number one question I get.
Number one.
When is someone going to jail?
Yeah, because if you run a small business in this country, and you have an OSHA infraction, or you don't pay your proper amount of taxes, right, the federal government comes down on you hard. If you're a doctor and you're involved in Medicare or Medicaid, the likelihood that you're going to have at some point some kind of judgment against you is almost 100%.
Yep.
But yet, the Team Obama can use these powers in a way that I consider illegal and certainly politicized and hyped to try to harm an opponent. Right. Nobody. No, nobody.
Yeah.
And Obama goes on television, President Obama goes on television, and all of his acolytes say, boy, this was the most, the most faithful to the law administration with 0 people, having scandals. They literally say that. And I think we're all tired of hearing that.
We sure are, but never forget what the Attorney General said the first time he testified, after he'd been, confirmed. First time he testified in front of the Senate Finance Committee, he said there was a failure of leadership at the upper echelon of the FBI. And I tell people that's the biggest understatement in history because, Comey was fired. Andy McCabe fired, was under investigation. Jim Baker, the chief counsel, had to leave and was under investigation. Peter Strzok, who ran the Clinton investigation and then ran the Trump-Russia investigation, was fired and under investigation. And, of course, then Lisa Page also had to leave the FBI. Those are the 5 key people who ran these, probably the 2 biggest investigations of our lifetime. The Clinton investigation, the mid-year exam, and then the Trump-Russia investigation, Crossfire Hurricane, which I find interesting, by the way. You can sort of tell where their focus was by the names they gave in the investigation. Clinton, mid-year exam, we just got to kind of drudge and get through this, and everything's fine with her. But with President Trump, this is Crossfire Hurricane. You can almost see him pounding their chest like Tarzan. We're going to get this guy, and that's exactly what they tried to do. And now the one individual.
I actually think they thought he was guilty. I think one of the reasons they have these high titles is I think they just thought the guy was deplorable, and they would find all these things. And what they didn't realize is he had been under scrutiny by prosecutors in the Southern District of New York his whole career, and he turned out to be someone who had operated with integrity.
Yep. And the guy who stands in their way now, though, is the Attorney General. Because he's dug into this. He's put Mr. Durham on it. We've gotten facts out now that we didn't have before. We knew there was something wrong. In fact, when a few months ago I said the only thing we had wrong, there was a handful, a few people in the conservative world, in the journalism world, a handful of members of Congress. We kept pushing. The only thing we had wrong about all this is it was worse than we thought. And now the Democrats have decided the one person we can go after to hopefully stop this from ultimately being concluded and someone being held accountable, the one person we need to go after and stop is Bill Barr. And so they just 2.5 weeks ago, they filed articles of impeachment against the Attorney General.
Yes, of
and
course.
when President Trump wins re-election, which I'm convinced he's going to do, when he wins re-election, I think that's what you're going to see him do. I think they're going to proceed with those. They're not going to do it between now and Election Day. But after Election Day, I think they will pursue impeachment against the Attorney General. And we'll be back at this thing again that we just went through 6 months ago.
Unless we can get that House majority, which I'm going to make a bold prediction. I think it's in play. I will say when it came to Hillary Clinton, remember, there wasn't an investigation of Hillary Clinton by Jim Comey. Loretta Lynch called it a matter. Said we're going to call it a matter. Right. This is the euphemizing of everything that has to do with them. And I think it was 5, 6, or 7 House investigations until the special Benghazi investigation where the Clintons had to fess up because you found out that there was a server in a toilet,
Yeah.
right, or in a bathroom,
In the bathroom.
and so I always think that's amazing. It's like, how can Hillary Clinton be under oath 5-6 different congressional investigations, never fesses up to the fact that she has this whole outside communication system?
That's
so
funny.
when they
I
say,
forgot that.
you see, you've done too much.
Yeah.
When they
I
say
forgot.
these things about, like, oh, the Trump people, they're just like, they're not participating in the investigation, and they're throwing up all these false flags. Nothing in the history of the world was more duplicitous than watching Team Clinton push back on what happened around Benghazi. And by the way, it bleeds to Susan Rice.
Yeah.
She goes on every Sunday morning TV show. They call that the full Ginsburg, because Ginsburg had represented Monica Lewinsky, and the first time in modern American politics he went on every Sunday show. She went on every Sunday show and deliberately lied to the world and to the American people as to what happened on that fateful day
blamed it on video.
in Benghazi. And now she's one of the leading candidates to be Joe Biden's VP.
With the also famous email on January 20th, at the exact moment the President of the United States, President Trump, is taking the oath of office, she's writing an email to herself saying that in that January 5th meeting, the President of the United States then, President Obama, said do everything by the book in the Trump-Russia investigation. And we know that is completely false, because everything was done exactly the opposite, not by the book at all, in the fact that they spied on a presidential campaign, spied on American citizens. And for one of those citizens, they used a dossier that was paid for by the Clinton campaign, a dossier where the person who had written it, Christopher Steele, had already communicated to the Justice Department that he was desperate, this is his quote, desperate to stop Trump from getting elected. That's the guy who wrote it. That's the document they used. The Clinton campaign paid for it. They go to the court and don't tell the court any of that information. And there were 15 other things they didn't tell the court. 15 other lies. 17 lies in total. Inspector General Horowitz said were involved in the Carter Page dossier and the Carter Page FISA application. That's how bad it was. And so when Mark Meadows says that someone needs to be held accountable and they think there's going to be indictments, there had better be. And I hope it's Brennan, Clapper, Comey. I hope it's all of them.
Yeah, and I still believe that Brennan was very involved in feeding into people's briefings all throughout the government that this whole Russian collusion was a real thing. I think that there was nuggets dropped everywhere. I think it was purposeful to get people to start
in the press
acting.
No, very true. Great point.
Yeah.
Great point. Some people have written about this very extensively. But you're exactly right. They would leak it. Well, we'll go to the meeting the next day. So January 5th, there's this meeting in the White House with these key people where Biden is talking about the Logan Act and how they're going to get Michael Flynn. Remember what happens the next day, January 6th. That's when they all go up. Comey, Clapper, Brennan, they all go up to the Trump Tower to give President-elect Trump his intelligence briefing that the incoming president is supposed to get. So they go up there, they brief him, give him the information he's supposed to get. Everyone leaves, but Comey sticks around. Comey sticks around because he's going to be also sticking around in the next administration. He sticks around, tells the president about the dossier that Jim Comey already knows is false. So he tells the president about the dossier for the express purpose that they can then go leak the fact that they talked to the president about the dossier.
And I also think it was a way of leveraging the president, like we got the goods on you.
Yes.
Which is what Hoover did for decades as the head of the FBI. Dropped little pieces of information to politicians so that those politicians would be in their hand and they could control them.
Yeah, and then they go out and leak the fact that they've talked that. So the press reports that. That's all part of, I think, the setup for Michael Flynn, which happens 2 weeks later when, again, Comey told us this, they sneak guys into the White House, don't follow proper protocols, don't tell Michael Flynn that he's entitled to a lawyer, sneak people in and trap Michael Flynn and get him to set him up, and then ultimately he gets indicted.
Yeah, now, so you say you do a lot of traveling, which we're glad about. You got to get everywhere. In the state of Ohio, we're reading that the president is in real trouble for his reelection. All these polls have come out that show him. It's amazing. I don't know how it's true. He's almost exactly behind Joe Biden, exactly the same number he was behind Hillary Clinton at this point 4 years ago, which makes me feel more dubious. And I actually believe in polls and read these polls. But what are you hearing in Ohio?
No, I think it's good in Ohio. He won Ohio by 8.5 points. He's going to win Ohio again, I think, by that margin or more. You see Trump flags going up. You see him out in the country. Now, the one thing I will say about the polls and where we're at today, and I think it's even more magnified than what it was in 2016. I do think there are lots of people, because of the cancel culture mob that's out there. You know, you say the wrong thing, the mob attacks you. They try to get you fired, whatever. So I think there are lots of people who are just like keeping their head down. I'm sure you've had this experience. People walk up to me and says, "Hey, I'm for Trump."
I call it the Trump whisper.
The Trump whisper, exactly.
You have the same thing?
Totally. And so I think you have that dynamic in play.
I bet the whisperer is probably not going to answer a pollster.
Not going to.
Because they don't know if it's a trick, will the information be shared? Will they literally lose their job? You could lose your job today in some of these corporations by just going to an evangelical church, a Baptist church, a conservative Catholic church, because that's hate speech. You know that, right?
Well, exactly, because the First Amendment is not really the First Amendment today because only one side's allowed to talk. And that is scary where we're at in the country. The example I keep pointing to is the football coach at Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy goes fishing with his kids, wears a T-shirt that, according to the cancel culture mob, is wrong, an OAN T-shirt, wears the T-shirt, and he had to take a pay cut. He had to do all the training and everything else, all kinds of apologies for simply wearing the wrong T-shirt fishing with his boys. You got to be kidding me. So that's how bad the mob is. I think that dynamic's in play. That's why these polls don't, I think, accurately reflect where the president is. But I still feel very confident in Ohio. The president's going to win just like he did 4 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. And you see all of this talk about 43 alumni for Biden, the Lincoln Project, which has, by the way, isn't it ironic that the Lincoln Project isn't saying anything against the mob trying to rip down Abraham Lincoln all over the place,
Great
right?
point.
So
Great
it's really not about, as I said the other day on Twitter, it's not about Abe Lincoln. I think it's about the Lincoln Town Car that they all drive in to go to all these fundraisers to figure out how to destroy America.
Great point. You think about what this president has accomplished with every single Democrat being against him, everyone in the mainstream press being against him, and frankly part of the Republican Party being against him. And yet, in spite of all that, amazing accomplishments. I always say that, taxes cut, regulations reduced, greatest economy in history prior to the coronavirus, lowest unemployment in 50 years, wages going up for everyone, out of the Iran deal, embassy in Jerusalem, hostages home from North Korea, new trade agreements, and a bunch of other things that I can't remember at the time. But that's how good it was and will be again. And we're already seeing, I was at a business in our district last Thursday, and they've been in operation 75 years. They said March of 2020 was the best month they've had in all 75 years of their business. May was the worst month. But guess what? In July, they're back up to where they were. So when the president talks about the V is happening, and it will continue to happen unless these Democrat mayors and Democrat governors keep getting in the way and not letting our economy reopen and our economy flourish. So it's good news out there. It's been good news under this president's leadership. I think Americans will remember that in our election day. I think he's going to win Ohio. I think he's going to win big, just like he did 4 years ago.
So to close the door on the fact that there are Republicans that are opposing Trump, I think what you all need to understand is that within these polls, we've never had a Republican president who had more support from conservatives, which is the most important part of this coalition, and Republicans ever. George W. Bush never had this level of support. Ronald Reagan never had this level of support. So why is there this cranky and loud and very well-funded couple of groups, right, that have come on? Well, it's the swamp, my friends. And these are people that are trying to, they're looking at the polls and they're saying, oh, Joe Biden's going to win. And I never really cottoned to Donald Trump anyway. So I've got to position myself from a career standpoint to be accepted by the new Biden people. Now, let me tell you, I've been around this town too long. That's why I have all this white hair. They're not going to be accepted by any Biden people. Yeah. They think they're doing something smart here, and they're going to get used, and then they're going to get chucked to the side. And then this whole question on the Lincoln Project, this is nothing but a couple of consultants that have an axe to grind. And you know what's interesting? I was talking to Mercy this morning as we had our morning cup of coffee, complaining about things generally. But, they keep running all these ads on Fox News. I think they're agitating the heck out of our people.
Yeah.
I think our people are getting one kind of fired up while they watch this really false messaging.
Yeah.
And that's what you're seeing back home.
Totally. The energy is there, the intensity.
Yeah. Like I've never seen in politics,
right,
really.
For people to come out and support this president who has stood up to the cancel culture mob, stood up to the swamp. But you're right. When you stand up to the mob, when you stand up to the mob and the swamp fight back. And that's what we're seeing. But, there was a bunch of Republicans who did this in the summer of 2016. They didn't think the president could win. They started running for the hills. Even some of them who wound up being Speaker of the House. They were wrong then, and I think they're wrong this time. But it's not. They're going to do what they're going to do.
I remember that person.
We just got to keep pressing on. And
this happened in 2004 with President Bush as well. You really can't rely on some of these establishment Republicans who are in this town. Because in the end, so many times they put their own career above the interests of the country. And I think we're just seeing that again. So this
Sure.
plays into this question. You need 17 seats to get the majority back in the House, literally to prevent the impeachment of Donald Trump a second time, to prevent the impeachment of Bill Barr a first time, and everywhere else they're going to go. Are you hopeful? Do you think it's going to be a stretch? Do you have any seats we can pick up in Ohio?
No, I think Ohio will be tough because we already got 12 of the 16, so we 12 of the 16.
And you'll hold those, right?
Yeah, we will. We feel very good about those. But the best example, the best indication is what happened in California with Mike Garcia. Great member, new member.
Already a pickup.
Yeah, and so we're down to, just like you said, 17. I think we can get there. Now, the conventional wisdom in this town is, no, you can't get there. But I think we can. And that's the first time we picked up a seat in California, moved a Democrat seat to Republican in 22 years. And he didn't just win by a couple votes. He won by thousands and thousands of votes. So,
and they put a lot of money in it.
Well, they changed the rules the last week.
Yeah.
They were going to do all mail-in, and then they said, well, wait a minute, we don't think that's helping us, so we're going to open up one precinct in the most Democrat area of the district, and they still couldn't get there. And Mike beat him bad. I mean, he's a Hispanic American descent. He's a fighter pilot.
Yep.
Went to the Naval Academy. Great candidate, great guy, and he won big. So I think
we endorsed him at ACU. So you all played your role too.
Oh, God bless you. I figured you did.
So let me push in on this question of Act Blue. So Act Blue is this online digital portal where all the left from really all over the world, specifically here in this country, is feeding money to very radicalized Marxist left-wing group. Mm-hmm. They're also the online platform that's pushing the majority, the Democratic majority for Nancy Pelosi, for Chuck Schumer, and Joe Biden. So all of this online portal called Act Blue is the same group that is funding these radical folks at Black Lives Matter and these other places. So, I think we ought to call Joe Biden out on the fact, like, all this money, right, is being coordinated with all these groups.
Yeah, all these left groups.
Yeah, they don't seem to even like America.
No, all these left groups who want to defund the police, and in the case of Minneapolis, want to abolish the police department, and want this radical. I keep coming back to this term, this cancel culture mob mentality taking over the country, which is just frightening, I think, to most Americans. So, yeah, these are hard leftists. That's what's at stake in this election. I think the vice president said this the other day. This election is really now, in my judgment, and the vice president communicated it so well. Can America stay America? The values and principles that made us the greatest nation ever. That's what's at stake here. And we all know where Biden and the Democrat left want to take the country. It will not be the same country. It will fundamentally change. And if they get power, imagine what the first thing they're going to do is change the filibuster in the Senate, which will then allow them to add Puerto Rico and D.C. as states, which then means it makes it real tough for us to ever win back the Senate if they do that. They're going to look to change the Electoral College. They're going to look to add new seats to the Supreme Court. They're going to look to mess with the voting booth in the United States run elections and federalize more federal control over the election process. So a host of fundamental framework kind of changes that undermine
they will transform America, which means fundamentally change it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean improve it.
Right.
It means fundamentally change it. And there's a lot at stake. And we appreciate your voice in all these fights.
Well, we appreciate yours. You guys have been around a few years fighting the good fight. God bless you.
We haven't. And the thing is, I'm so bad at broadcasting that I didn't even introduce Jim Jordan.
Yeah.
Because I know you know who he is. And he's got all of these great awards from us through the years. 100%. I think it's every year you've been in Congress.
Yeah.
Which I hate bringing up because you can always screw that up, Congressman. One vote.
This will probably be the year now that you mentioned it.
Well, we appreciate all you do. We
you.
Appreciate you standing up, and we love coming at you 3 times a week on CPAC Live. And we really, we just feel like this is such an important moment, and we all have to work together to save our country.
God bless you.
Thank you, Jim Jordan.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Outstanding, outstanding. I understand we're running a little bit behind schedule, so they cut my speech from an hour to 45 minutes, so let's get started. Good morning, Patriots. My name is John James, and I'd like to begin by telling you a little story. I'd like to tell you a story about a little boy who was born in Starkville, Mississippi. He lived directly across the street from Mississippi State University, born in 1941, but he couldn't go there because he was black. Despite growing up in the worst economic inequality and institutional racism that this country has ever known, He refused to allow vulnerability to become victimhood. He never allowed dependency to become his destiny. He paid his way through college. He served honorably in Vietnam. He moved to Detroit in 1971 to start a trucking company with one truck, one trailer, and no excuses, hauling beer back and forth between Detroit and Milwaukee. For the better part of the next decade, he fought government regulation all the way up to the Supreme Court for the right to compete. He worked, he evolved, until he was able to provide a life for his family that was previously unimaginable. He grew an idea into a $35 million company, automotive supplier, before a change of management in 2012. That little boy is my father. My father, like so many others who've immigrated from all over the world and from the Jim Crow South for better opportunities, never asked for free stuff. They asked for a fair shot. I am not standing here on this stage because of socialism. I'm standing here because of free enterprise and free will and because self-determination works. When I was a little boy, I was taught to use my blessings to be a blessing to others. I was taught to take something good that you've received and turn it into something greater. I started by leaving home and attending West Point, becoming a Ranger qualified Apache pilot and flying 750 hours combat in Operation Rocky Freedom. I returned home from the war to an automotive industry in turmoil, a city in bankruptcy, and helped to grow that $35 million company into a $135 million company under 5 years. I got married, earned a couple master's degrees, and made a few little boys. John is 6, Hudson's about to be 5, and Christian just turned 1. And when I look at my 3 sons, I'm reminded each and every single day that this is the greatest country on the planet. And like America, our stories didn't begin with us. I am the walking result of the American dream, and I believe the American dream is worth fighting for. I believe the American dream is worth sacrificing for. A few of my classmates gave their lives for it. We, all of us, must be willing to continue their fight so that all people have an opportunity, a chance at the American dream. That's what makes America exceptional. 150 years ago, Lincoln warned us, America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter, if we lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. A century later, Reagan warned us, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Freedom is not something we pass along to the children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Tonight in South Carolina, there will be a primary among Democrat candidates who have been talking about how to con a generation into embracing socialism. In 2020, we must remember that Lincoln did not fight the Civil War to beat the South. He and his party, the Republican Party, stood up to end the physical bondage of black people and to keep this country together. This election, fellow patriots, is not about beating Bernie. This election is about freeing those in socioeconomic bondage in our cities and winning back a generation turning to socialism on our campuses. Listen closely, listen very closely, because I want to be clear, crystal clear. Do not underestimate the appeal of socialism for those whom the status quo has failed. For the American dream to prevail, for us to defeat socialism, for us to save a generation, we can't just say socialism sucks and assume that people will follow us. Stuck Americans don't want socialism. They just want the pain to stop, but it's up to us to offer a remedy that works. We must show them an America where a child's outcome isn't determined by the zip code they're born in, where a good education is attainable and hard work truly does get you ahead. We must show them an America that protects our communities from tyrants without leaving our children vulnerable to terrorists. We must show them an America where a woman has better choices than life or death, where an accident or illness doesn't leave a family in financial ruin. We must show them an America where the son of a slave can become a sharecropper, the son of a sharecropper can become a mason, the son of a mason can become a truck driver, and the son of that truck driver can stand before you here today on the brink of becoming Michigan's first black U.S. Senator. You show me where in the world you can go from slave to senator in 4 generations and from poverty to prosperity in 1, and I'll show you the United States of America. I will show you the American dream. We must counter the socialist movement of envy and confiscation with a conservative movement of access and opportunity. We must show this generation that free will and free enterprise benefits each of us without sacrificing compassion and conscientiousness for all of us. We must become the disciples of the American dream and share the good news unafraid with those who are being seduced by lies. That's how we win. That's how America wins. Abraham Lincoln showed us how to stand up to oppression and hold this nation together by sheer force of will. Reagan showed us how to defeat Marxist ideology without firing a shot. President Trump dares us to be great while continuing to tear down barriers and increase access to the American dream for the forgotten in every corner of this nation. But he's not done, and we're most definitely not done. We have a long way to go, and the president needs you, I need you, and most importantly, a generation on the verge of socialism needs you. The hour is hand, ladies and gentlemen, fellow patriots, and by the grace of God and your hard work, freedom will not end with us. The American dream will not end with us. We're just getting started. Thank you. God bless you. Let's fly.
Boy, it's refreshing to hear John James's speech from February of 2020 from CPAC 2020 to remind us of some of those important things that seem to have been forgotten about in the past few months, such as what it means to be an American, what it means to be called to serve in a leadership position. John James, of course, was a West Point graduate. And is representing a very important state. Donald Trump won Michigan by just 10,000 votes in 2016. The margin of victory there was less than 0.25%. Hillary got 47.25%. Donald Trump got 47.5%. That translated to those 10,000 votes. It was a historic occasion for Republicans. The state hadn't gone red since George Herbert Walker Bush won it after 2 years of Ronald Reagan in 1988. There are a lot of blue collar folks, a lot of union folks, a lot of Bernie supporters that were attracted to the Donald Trump America First message. And a lot of them live in that Detroit suburb area. And that's why we're headed there this Thursday, October the 15th. If you're in the Michigan area, come and see us at CPAC Michigan. We'll be there at the Macomb County Drive-In at Freedom Hill Park this Thursday, October the 15th, where we'll be joined by Brandon Struck of Walkaway, former acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, investigative journalist Sarah Carter, Hillsdale, founder and president Larry Arnn, and Representative Tim Walberg. That's this Thursday, October the 15th in Sterling Heights, just outside of Detroit. And then 1 week later, on Thursday, October the 22nd, we'll be back for our second annual CPAC Minnesota. That's Thursday, October the 22nd. So all of our Minnesota friends, please go to conservative.org, register for either CPAC Michigan or CPAC Minnesota, or both of them. Remember, there's a lot at stake. Also at conservative.org, you can check out what it'll be like to live in Joe Biden's America. We don't want that. And it's not too late to pick up your America versus Socialism yard sign, T-shirt, ball cap, and bumper sticker. Your voice heard. We've got one in our lawn. If you check out Matt Schlapp's Twitter account, you know that he's got one in his lawn. and we look forward to seeing you this Wednesday for another fun-filled, action-packed edition of CPAC Live. See you then.